A communication blackout in Gaza has now continued for 4 days, the Palestine Red Crescent Society, PRCS, said Sunday, making it the longest since the start of the Israeli operation in October. The Internet monitoring organization NetBlocks said on social media Saturday that the disruption was already the longest sustained telecoms blackout on record since the onset of the conflict with Israel, and is likely to significantly limit visibility into events on the ground. In a video accompanying the social media post on X, formerly known as Twitter, supervisor of the PRCS Emergency Operations Room in Gaza, Osama Khaled, said the organization will resort to VHF radio communication as an alternative plan, but added this type of communication limits the space available for communication and poses a challenge to our work. The signal is weak and susceptible to interference from other sources, which weakens the credibility and volume of the information we receive. Undoubtedly, ambulances will face challenges during this time, especially with the power outage, he said. Khaled went on to say the power outage has affected the main aerial communication service provider located at the association's headquarters in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Unfortunately, this is the sole vehicle that all ambulance centers in the Gaza Strip rely on. This poses a significant challenge for ambulance vehicles in responding to humanitarian cases, signaling potential difficulties in mobility, said Khaled. PRCS added on X that its emergency medical teams are encountering significant challenges in reaching the wounded amidst the ongoing shelling. The leaders of Venezuela and Guyana said Thursday that they would not use force against each other amid a dispute over an oil-rich piece of Guyanese land and agreed to create a joint commission to address the territorial spat. Still, the two countries' positions on the Essequibo region remained vastly at odds after a day-long summit held on the Caribbean island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, with a joint declaration issued at its conclusion affirming both Guyana's view that the dispute should be resolved by the International Court of Justice and Venezuela's lack of consent and lack of recognition of the International Court of Justice and its jurisdiction in the border controversy. Tension over the land, which amounts to about two-thirds of Guyanese national territory, has mounted in recent days after a Venezuelan referendum in which voters assented to the creation of a Venezuelan state within the disputed region. Guyana has called the move a step towards annexation and an existential threat. In the joint declaration, both countries agreed to not threaten or use force against one another in any circumstances, and refrain, whether by words or deeds, from escalating any conflict or disagreement arising from any controversy between them. The Joint Commission will include each country's foreign minister and technical staff, to address matters as mutually agreed, and should issue an update within 3 months, the declaration said. Both countries also agreed to meet again in Brazil in the following months, to consider any matter with implications for the territory in dispute. Earlier Thursday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and Guyanese President Irfan Ali shook hands. Video of the meeting showed, with the two men surrounded by advisors and officials from regional Caribbean blocs at the Argyle International Airport near the island's capital Kingston. At a news conference held between meetings, Ali told reporters that there is absolutely no retreat by Guyana in ensuring that this matter is determined by the ICJ and that the outcome of this matter at the ICJ be respected by all. We made it very clear that Guyana is not the aggressor. Guyana is not seeking war, he added. But Guyana reserves the right to work with all our partners to ensure the defense of our country. Venezuela has long laid claim to the Essequibo and rejects an 1899 ruling by an international tribunal that set the boundaries. In a statement on X describing the Thursday meeting, the Venezuelan government said that leaders of the two countries had expressed their willingness to continue with the dialogue and resolve the controversy in relation to the Essequibo territory. Maduro later shared a copy of the declaration on X, writing, "Excellent day of dialogue." The prime ministers of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Dominica as well as envoys from the UN and Brazil were in the room for the meetings acting as interlocutors. The leaders of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Dominica also currently serve as the heads of two important regional blocs, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, and the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, respectively. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Taiwanese citizen Nancy Shea received a message from her relatives online. To stop the virus from entering your lungs, all you need to do is drink lots of water with salt and vinegar. But she knew immediately this was false information. Right beneath the original message online, Taiwan's most popular messaging app, a chatbot replied that the claim was not supported by science, with a link to an article that fact-checked this erroneous information. The chatbot, Anti-Mayu, is one of multiple Taiwanese fact-checking applications that have increasingly gained prominence, as the island democracy of 23.5 million people steps up its readiness to combat the rising flow of false information from circulating within society. Besides unscientific methods of treating COVID, Shea recalled, debunked other rumors such as a fake speech attributed to an official from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, misrepresentation of polling results, and fraudulent food safety reports. Experts say fact-checking mechanisms like this are becoming more important, especially as Taiwan is set to choose a new president in a highly consequential election next month. The vote comes at a moment of high tensions as Beijing ramps up military, political and economic pressure on the island that China's ruling Communist Party claims as its own territory, despite having never controlled it. Like many places in the world, Taiwan often sees an uptick in disinformation during elections. But it is also uniquely targeted outside of voting season because of the precarious geopolitical space it lives in. According to a report by Stockholm University's Varieties of Democracy project, published in March this year, Taiwan for the 10th consecutive year received the greatest amount of disinformation from outside its borders, highlighting the need for effective fact-checking mechanisms on the island. At a recent closed-door security briefing attended by CNN, Taiwan's intelligence community warned that China has been working to influence Taiwan's upcoming election through a series of disinformation, military and economic operations, with the goal of boosting the chances of opposition candidates who favor improving ties with Beijing. According to Taiwanese intelligence, Wang Huning, the fourth-ranking leader in the Chinese Communist Party, recently convened a meeting to coordinate efforts to influence the election, while reducing the likelihood that external parties could find evidence of such interference. They hope that the party they dislike will lose the election, a senior Taiwanese security official, referring to the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, which views Taiwan as a de facto sovereign nation and has prioritized elevating Taipei's ties with Western powers since taking office in 2016. The candidate for DPP, Vice President Lai Ching-te, is currently leading in the polls, and is openly loathed by Chinese officials. Lai is ahead of two other candidates, Hu Yuih from the Kuomintang Party and Ko Wen-je from the Taiwan People's Party, who are seen as favoring closer relations with Beijing. Among the different strategies deployed by Beijing, Taiwan believes China's cognitive warfare operations, which included spreading disinformation in Taiwan and magnifying talking points that favor China-friendly candidates, are the most sophisticated, multiple officials said at a closed-door briefing on security affairs attended by CNN. Besides operating content farms and fake accounts on social media, the officials alleged that China's information operations are multifaceted. Other tactics used by Beijing included working with private companies to impersonate genuine news websites, handpicking soundbites that fit Beijing's narratives from Taiwanese television programs and repackaging them into short social media videos, and illicitly funding small news organizations in Taiwan that mostly report on local livelihood issues but also occasionally post content that cast doubts toward candidates unfavorable to Beijing. One piece of disinformation highlighted by officials was a recent rumor that Xiao Bai-kim, the DPP's vice presidential candidate and until recently Taiwan's top representative in Washington, is a U.S. citizen. Fact-checking reports, including from the Taiwan Fact-Check Center, one of the most prominent news verification groups on the island, indicated that while Xiao used to hold U.S. citizenship, she had renounced it in 2002. Besides spreading rumors, Beijing has also been exerting pressure on Taiwanese businesses with investments in mainland China to toe the party line, and luring Taiwanese politicians with discounted trips to mainland cities in an attempt to generate support for candidates lobbying for closer ties to Beijing, the officials claimed. CNN has reached out to China's Taiwan Affairs Office for comment. China's attempts to sway Taiwanese voters haven't always been successful. Ahead of Taiwan's first direct presidential election in 1996, Beijing fired missiles toward the island to intimidate voters not to support a candidate championing Taiwan's separate identity from China. That move backfired spectacularly and the candidate, Li Tengwei, swept to a landslide victory. Outgoing Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, who is from the DPP and cannot run again because of term limits, was frequently the target of angry warnings from Chinese officials. But Taiwanese voters handed her 2 consecutive terms in 2016 and 2020. News literacy experts say China's cognitive warfare operations against Taiwan have long been happening beyond election seasons. Puma Shen, an associate professor at National Taipei University who specializes in researching disinformation, said researchers can often establish a link between a disinformation campaign and the Chinese authorities by analyzing IP addresses of the accounts that propagate the rumors and whether they are automated. China's public opinion war is often aimed at influencing independent and young voters, said Shen, who is running to become a legislator with the DPP. But Taiwanese security officials cautioned that China's disinformation operations could go beyond undermining trust in the government. According to a Taiwanese security document obtained and reviewed exclusively by CNN, authorities are investigating an incident in the summer, during which they believed China may be training for a false flag operation, one that could be used to justify a future military attack against Taiwan. The incident took place in July, when a Beijing-friendly Taiwanese newspaper falsely claimed that Washington had ordered Taipei to develop biological weapons that could be used against China's People's Liberation Army. According to the security document, the rumor initially appeared in fabricated meeting minutes that claimed to show discussions between senior Taiwanese officials regarding the fictitious project, which was subsequently passed on to a local reporter. Both Washington and Taipei have refuted the claim that Taiwan was developing biological weapons, and there is no evidence the discussions took place. The Taipei District Prosecutor's Office subsequently launched an investigation into the journalist over allegations of forgery. A Taiwanese security official told CNN authorities had high confidence that Beijing was behind the fabricated document, because it contained some terminologies commonly used by the Chinese Communist Party that are unfamiliar to Taiwan. As the false report generated outrage in mainland China, the Chinese military simultaneously sent more than 100 warplanes into Taiwan's self-declared air defense identification zone over the next 3 days, a significantly higher number of incursions than usual. We believe this goes beyond just spreading disinformation, the security official said. Beijing seems to be practicing how it could use disinformation to create an excuse for military action and target Taiwan militarily, using a justification that the United States was about to start a war against China. The official added that the unusual combination of a disinformation campaign and heightened military activity has raised alarm among Taiwan's intelligence community that Beijing could be training for a false flag operation, and to use the outrage it would generate as justification for a potential future military attack on Taiwan. China's Taiwan Affairs Office did not respond to a request from CNN for comment on the fabricated document allegations. The growing threat of disinformation, and its potential implications on Taiwan's democracy, has highlighted the need for effective fact-checking mechanisms in Taiwan to help citizens debunk false information in everyday life. Chen Pei-huang, a senior journalist at the Taiwan Fact-Check Center, said while their newsroom hires about a dozen reporters, they are outnumbered by the vast amount of false rumors circulating online. For us, besides simply fact-checking a piece of information, we think it is important to promote media literacy. Because if most people have the ability to question the authenticity of a piece of information, then it will be harder for rumors to circulate. This is where apps like Anti-Mayu can help. Unlike other fact-checking applications, which generally provide an interface for users to manually insert and verify text or a website link, The chatbot can be enabled in group chats or direct messages online and has the ability to automatically scan messages and warn of any potentially misleading content. A lot of people tell us that it really helps a lot, because sometimes they wouldn't dare to directly tell their parents or relatives that this kind of information is wrong, said Cecile Chen, who runs the chatbot under Gogoluk, a Taiwanese tech company specializing in call filtering services. She also emphasized that the chatbot has an apolitical background. Shay, from Taoyuan City, said her elderly relatives now feel embarrassed whenever Auntie Mayu warns that their messages contain misleading information. As a result, she said, they have learned not to forward every message they get before considering its truthfulness. For my elderly relatives, if they can pause and suspect whether a piece of information they received is really accurate, I think this is already great progress for them, Shay said. As for Chen, the fact-checking journalist, his work goes beyond simply verifying the authenticity of what people see online. If we can provide people with accurate information and statistics, the public can learn that while we can disagree on different issues, we must base our opinions on solid evidence, he said. Abdoulaye Diabaté faced a life-threatening bout of malaria when he was just 5 years old. Diabaté narrowly survived the mosquito-borne disease, but cousins ages 3 and 4 were not as fortunate. Diabaté, who now heads medical entomology and parasitology at Burkina Faso's Research Institute in Health Sciences, is developing an innovative technique that could potentially wipe out malaria-transmitting mosquito species by altering their genes. The Burkina Faso-born scientist and professor was awarded the 2023 Falling Walls Prize for Science and Innovation Management for his research, which organizers said, offers hope for malaria control. Diabaté was named in September as the only African among 10 global winners of the prestigious award for this year and was also recognized by the Falling Walls Foundation for contributing some of the world's most advanced work on genetic solutions to malaria. The Falling Walls Foundation is a non-profit organization dedicated to fostering breakthrough thinking. Malaria is a leading cause of death in Diabaté's country, where nearly all of the West African nation's 22 million inhabitants, especially children, are at risk of the disease, according to the World Health Organization. Malaria killed nearly 19,000 people in Burkina Faso in 2021, the most recent data from the WHO Regional Office for Africa showed. The disease is also one of the main causes of death in the wider African region, which shoulders the world's largest malaria burden. For many years, malaria control interventions, including the use of insecticide-treated bed nets, have helped to reduce transmission and deaths in affected countries. However, malaria deaths remain unacceptably high, and cases have continued to increase since 2015, WHO said in April, adding that the upswing in infections was due to the rising cost of providing those interventions as well as the biological threats that enable drug resistance and aid vector mosquitoes in developing immunity to insecticides. Malaria killed an estimated 619,000 people globally in 2021, according to WHO's last published data. Around 96% of those deaths happened in Africa, the health body said, adding that 80% of casualties on the continent were among children under the age of 5. Diabaté told CNN that innovating malaria control tools was the only way to conquer the disease. Although bed nets are doing a fantastic job, we now have widespread insecticide resistance in the different species of mosquitoes, specifically those that are transmitting malaria, he said. This makes it difficult to defeat malaria with these conventional tools. This is why it is extremely important to innovate and get new tools that can complement the existing ones. Otherwise, in no way would we be able to defeat malaria. Diabaté said he is optimistic that his vector control tool for malaria, described as gene drive technology, could be the game changer when rolled out. Malaria is transmitted through the bite of female Anopheles mosquitoes that are infected with the parasitic disease. Male mosquitoes do not bite so are unable to transmit malaria. With gene drive, female mosquito species that transmit the disease are prevented from producing new female offspring through the release of gene-edited males that are made sterile into the environment. Jabate said the female mosquito population would be depleted and malaria transmission halted. When the gene-edited mosquitoes are released in the field, they will spread across the entire mosquito population and cut malaria transmission right away, he said, adding that gene drive was a more sustainable and budget-friendly malaria control intervention. The genetically modified mosquitoes are the ones to do the job for you. Unlike the other, malaria control interventions where humans run from place to place to deliver. The good thing about this technology that we are developing is that if it works as expected, it's not only going to be cost-effective, but it will also be sustainable and can be deployed in remote and difficult-to-access areas in Africa. We believe that once the technology is ready and we release it and it works as expected, it should be able to be the game-changer. However, it may take a few more years to roll out gene drive technology in Africa, Jabate said. In 2019, Jabate's Vector Control Research Alliance, Target Malaria, conducted the first phase of the project by releasing Africa's pioneer batch of genetically edited mosquitoes in Bana, a village in western Burkina Faso. More than 14,000 sterile male mosquitoes were let loose the same day during the controlled release, according to Target Malaria, which added that 527 of the released mosquitoes were recaptured after 20 days. While the release was not aimed at impacting malaria transmission, it was a stepping one for the team to gather information, build knowledge, and develop local skills, the Research Alliance further said in a blog post, adding, "This analysis and the data gathered is providing invaluable insights that we are already using in the next phases of our research." There have been similar projects targeting mosquitoes' DNA. In 2013, a U.S. biotech company, Oxitec, developed gene-modified mosquitoes that pass on a deadly gene to female species of the Aedes aegypti mosquito that transmits yellow fever, as well as the dengue and Zika viruses. The offspring of the gene-modified female mosquitoes die in the larval stage. In 2016, the International Atomic Energy Agency also launched an X-ray-powered technique to sterilize male mosquitoes in Latin America and the Caribbean, aimed at reducing the reproduction of female offspring that transmit Zika. Jabate's research appears to be among the first using gene editing to target male. Health authorities outside Burkina Faso have welcomed Jabate's gene drive technology, but questions remain about its impact on the environment when fully released. Lumbani Muntali, a program manager for Malawi's National Malaria Control Program, told CNN that although gene drive technology is a good innovation that is coming at the right time, its ecological impact is unknown. Gene drive technology has to do with modifying genetic materials, so you never know the new vector that you'll have and what this will mean to the environment or the ecology, he said. It's something that researchers need to look at. German-based advocacy group Save Our Seeds, SOS, has campaigned strongly against gene drive technology, saying its impact on ecosystems cannot be predicted. Every living creature, even if it appears dangerous or harmful to humans, fulfills important tasks in its habitat, SOS said on its website. The extermination or even manipulation of a species will therefore have consequences for the entire ecosystem, it added. The advocacy group explained that mosquitoes are among the major sources of food for many animals such as birds and dragonflies, while recalling that, in the Camargue, a nature reserve in southern France, the decimation of mosquitoes with a biological pesticide led to a reduction in the number and diversity of birds and dragonflies. Jabate told CNN that specific concerns about gene drive technology will be factored into the development process of the project. CNN has contacted the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for comment on the safety of gene drive technology. Jabate said he has dedicated his life to fighting malaria, which he said took a toll on his personal life. Malaria has affected every aspect of my personal life, from nearly dying of the disease as a toddler to taking care of my loved ones every time they get sick. I have therefore decided to dedicate my life to fighting this disease that stifles the development of Africa and breaks the future of millions of African lives, he said. Dr. Quayne Stewart, a veterinarian whose nonprofit, Project Street Vet, provides medical care to the pets of people experiencing homelessness, is the 2023 CNN Hero of the Year. Online voters selected him from among this year's top 10 CNN heroes. "I've wanted to be a veterinarian my whole life, since I was a child," Stewart said when accepting the award. "I'm so lucky to be doing what I'm doing." Stewart's outreach on the streets started more than a decade ago. On a whim, the veterinarian stopped to examine the dog of a homeless man outside a 7-Eleven where he got his coffee. Stewart treated the dog's skin condition and the animal was transformed. But for Stewart, the man's gratitude was a wake-up call. "Thank you for not ignoring me," were the words that Stewart says inspired his next chapter. "It doesn't matter what your situation is. I see a pet in need, and I see a person who cares for them dearly who just needs some help," Stewart said. As CNN Hero of the Year, Stewart will receive $100,000 to expand his work and will also be named an Elevate Prize winner, which comes with $300,000 in unrestricted funding and resources from the Elevate Prize Foundation. He and the other top 10 CNN heroes honored at Sunday's gala all receive a $10,000 cash award along with donation matching up to $50,000 from the Elevate Prize Foundation. The foundation will also provide organizational and capacity-building support to all of the honorees. Stewart had spent several years working in a county shelter in Northern California when he thought about quitting in 2011. He'd long dreamed of saving animals but was instead forced to euthanize an increasing number of those that were being surrendered. "It was the recession. I'm seeing hordes of unwanted pets dropped off. People who don't have the money to feed them or care for them medically," Stewart, 53, said. "It started to steal a part of my soul. I thought about leaving the veterinary profession altogether." Stewart was at a crossroads, he said, desperately trying to lower the shelter's rates of euthanasia and increase adoption rates, but also struggling with the sheer number of animals dropped off there. Project Street Vet came about after his encounter with the homeless man and his dog outside the 7-Eleven. "That was the moment I said to myself, I'm going to do more of this. I'm going to get back to saving animals on my terms. And I'm going to do it for passion, not for pay. It was my way to heal," said Stewart. "Maybe some of it was guilt. Maybe some of it was I just wanted my own little crusade." Soon after, Stewart began to do more outreach, setting up small drop-in clinics to provide medical care to pets whose owners couldn't afford it and walking the streets looking for unhoused individuals whose pets needed help. Right away he was struck by how much the pet owners cared for their beloved animals. They're with each other 24/7 of an hour a day. Their bond and relationship is on a different level, Stewart said. Because they're not in a traditional home, it doesn't necessarily make them less of a pet parent. A pet doesn't care about nice furniture and a big home. They want to spend it with you. He found that many pet owners wanted to share their stories about their dog and their history together. With their consent, Stewart's brother, Ian, eventually began documenting some of the work and personal stories to raise awareness about animal welfare and homelessness. They probably get criticized more than anything, especially from people in the outside world. But I've seen people give up their last meal for their pet and people who have $3 to their name, and after I'm done with the treatment, they will try and give me that $3, Stewart said. His brother encouraged him to spread the word and join forces with others to provide street care, and soon more like-minded animal welfare professionals jumped on board. Genesis Rendon, a registered veterinary nurse who Stewart calls his right hand, had worked in the veterinary field for nearly 2 decades and was doing her own street outreach when she teamed up with him in 2016. Today, as a lead volunteer for Project Street Vet, she is often by Stewart's side in homeless camps and on Los Angeles' Skid Row assisting animals in need. Now it's spreading across the country, Stewart said. I'm building a network of trusted volunteers, technicians with hospitals and clinics we can call on. These are all people who just reached out and said, I'm inspired by what you do. How do I do it? Stewart says they can treat about 80% of the cases they see out of a small portable kit. Treatments include antibiotics, vaccines, and anti-inflammatories as well as deworming and flea and tick medications. It's boots on the ground, Stewart said, adding that their group will also help connect animals in need to clinic services. And whenever we can, we advocate for or assist people in getting their animals spayed and neutered. Stewart's work with Project Street Vet is all volunteer, and the organization has expanded to other cities, including Orlando and Atlanta. It doesn't matter what your situation is or what your background or past is, I see a pet in need, and I see a person who cares for them dearly who just needs some help. Ellipsis. It's at no cost to them. It's free. Since he started, Stewart and his volunteer teams have treated thousands of animals while giving their human parents hope and dignity, too. I will say this about the people I've met who have pets on the streets, he said. They are some of the most remarkable pet parents I've ever met. If you're inspired to help, you can donate to Stewart and each of the top 10 CNN Heroes causes. You can donate to Stewart's Project Street Vet and all the top 10 CNN Heroes nonprofit organizations on cnnheroes.com. The Elevate Prize Foundation is matching donations made directly through cnnheroes.com up to $50,000 per hero.